Yeah, there you go. I want to get some of these. I'll put those in there, just to make it a little bit more interesting. All right. The Then I'm gonna work on. Okay, so I'm gonna start a different approach to the painting. I'm gonna get myself a medium tone value board in second here. Find one. This is a medium tone, I'm gonna put this on here, this is a medium tone value board, so, and it actually is gonna be easier for you to see, I think. Let me just move through here, second. I'll position my camera in a second. But this is not as dark, and so it should read a lot easier for you to see it. Let's see what we got here. One of the things about handling with the okay, I'm gonna start painting. All right, for me, all right, the thing that I like to do is to take something like a round brush of some sort, whether it be one of my favorites, which is the girl hair. Okay, I'm gonna turn off I'm sitting under my air conditioning unit, so it's gonna be a little cold today. All right, so the first thing that I do is what I'm gonna do is eventually figure out what I want as far as the idea is concerned, right? I was hoping to kind of see it all here, so maybe I'm gonna have to move the camera a little bit more. I'm gonna paint the flowers. All right, for you. And hopefully you can probably see them all. There's one that's outside the image area there. Let me see if I can get it. There it is. Okay. So there you can see what I'm doing. All right. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just kind of go after using a color that's very similar to the ground. All right. And I'm gonna use a burnt sienna. That's what I'm gonna use. So I'm gonna start with I think it's a burnt sienna. No, that's a red, it's good. That might be a good one. It's a crimson. All right. And I'm going to start to paint this. All right. Usually I'll go after my darks. Okay. So we can kind of see the kind of lyrical rhythm that I use when I'm painting. All right, this is it's an interesting way of working. All right, now you notice that I didn't draw any outlines, but I'm so used to painting that I don't need to. All right, so we might call this gestural. It's loose and it's fresh. Okay, and it's for placement. So if anything, you'll get an understanding of where I am with this. And I like painting flowers, by the way, and it was John Singer Sargent that it was interesting to him when he was talking to his students, he said, you should paint flowers. All right, you'll learn a lot more painting flowers. So once I put my darks in and I get my placement, then I can kind of start to go after colors or values or whatever. And sometimes it's easier to go after the darks first. All right, so I'll kind of go after these.
Hey,
Right?
Walt,
Yeah.
the top of your canvas is cut off a bit. Can you maybe slide the camera up just a bit?
Okay,
Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
okay. All right, so now I'm gonna just kind of go after the pattern of the darks and you can see that I can just kind of throw them in. All right, we're not making them that solid, but we're trying to get the feeling for where they are. All right, and I think that the darker that we have the darks, yeah, you're not hearing me say anything about color at this point. But I will go after a variation, and here I'm gonna go after the brown that's there. I did start with a little bit of blue. That is a really good idea. It's a decision that I just made, only because when you start with the blue, you have to watch that you don't make things muddy. That's the main thing. So next thing I'm gonna do is kind of go after some of the light. It's funny how the paint really absorbed the water today. I sprayed water on here and it's dry already. So it says a lot about the air. Gouache will respond that way, by the way. All right. So the next, because I'm on a tone ground, this is one of the things about a tone ground. You can work light and dark simultaneously. So now we're gonna go after our lights. All right, remember that this is a first layer of paint, and it will essentially become grayer as we go along. So I want you to recognize that. And we can kind of go after where we feel the most important lights are. And just kind of throw them in. It's not necessarily that I'm painting color at this point. I'm painting lights. All right. So that helps me to kind of get the pattern of things going. All right, which I think when we say pattern, that means that there's an idea here that you know, where we respond in a certain way. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is kind of to study things. As far as the light is concerned, this is really interesting, but we're gonna start studying edges. All right, and try to make things work as far as the light is concerned. This is the negative space or the light on the table. All right, so we have that now, you know, making a painting is like building a house. So you have to really look at all of this to see what you want from it. All right. I think I'm not doing any drawing, so I have to kind of visualize the piece on my board. Okay. And you can kind of get an idea of where I'm putting my lights now. With the watercolor brush, you don't have to be so concerned that things won't work. All right, because you can make them work relatively easily by just painting over them. So it isn't like it's rocket science. All right, you know, sometimes people are concerned that they won't get the right size or something like that. When I'm painting without drawing, I have to be aware of sizes and relationships. But I think I'll I can always paint over it. So if I misdrew it or something like that, I can always come back and paint over it. You can see me now blocking in the negative. And when you block in the negative space, it's interesting how that is important in designing. And now I can kind of go after some of the cooler color. The cooler color is a blue, and so you're gonna see me going after it and the way it defines things. Okay, and that doesn't look like blue. It is. And make it a little bit bluer, but it is blue, and so now we're kind of walking in the negative. And I'm using the mid-ground, the mid-tone, as my kind of lighter values. All right, at this point, it's going to be an important value from the standpoint of how we make this work. Okay, so it's and I'm going to go after some turquoise. All right, the turquoise is a really interesting color here. Okay, let me see if I can find that color easily. Gotta find some green. And we'll go to the turquoise and how it's defining the flowers. I like painting like this. Now I'll tell you, when it worked at the beach, that was one of the challenges. All right, when I was trying to make paintings with people moving. All right, I could paint the one person pretty easily, but to try and paint the whole beach was very difficult because of the fact that people are moving and they're not there when you're putting the colors down. So that was difficult, but painting one person, you just have that person that you're dealing with, so you can get things done much faster. But I think that was one of the issues that I had to deal with. That I've learned, there are different styles that work, and a painterly style like this will work for certain things, not necessarily everything. So you can kind of see how I'm building. I always build my idea away from the where's the strong edge. So if this was the strong edge here, all right, on the edge of this right here, then I'm working away from that, working in that direction. And get this in. This is sort of a violet background. So I'm going to use some violets and blue and some white. And get that violet blue to work here. See if I can get it. And try it here. Now this helps me to recognize what I'm dealing with. Okay, I've got a mirror, so the mirror is up here. It does have a reflection in it of some flowers. All right, so we're gonna throw those in a little bit. All right, they're up in here. So yeah, I might have some light there. All right, once I do that, I might go after local color now. All right, when I say I might, that's probably the important thing about the designing. The first color I put down was that turquoise. All right, the rest are just kind of underpainting. And now I'm kind of going after the light of the object. All right, and it's sort of its local color. Not necessarily going after, it's, you know, there's a certain sense of shape, but it's not necessarily a shape that's, you know, exact, all right? So now we're kind of going after the reds. And then we have another red here. And eventually I'll come back to that. I just want to go back now, and go back to the flowers a little bit and get this violet light that we have. All right, coming out of the flowers. When I say violet light, it means violet, violet color. Because I always look at things, if they read as violet, then we have to read them as a color. All right, of light. So I don't really try to think in terms of things being in other words, I want to always try to go with the color that I feel it defines it as light. So now we'll throw a few touches in here, where we fill the negative space. And you know, I might go after the dark here now of the eggplant, all right, which is right here. And that's one of the strongest darks. So, and this is where I have one of the strongest edges. And so now I'm really looking at the edge. Okay. And trying to make this work a little bit. Okay, let's see what we got here. But that helps now to define this even more. And you know, can I use water? I'll make the paint thicker here in the beginning, and then I'll kind of work away with it with the water, just like the transparency that we were talking about earlier. All right, when we were doing this you know, talking about how the you know, read the weight of the paint, but usually you're kind of working away from an edge. So and then we're gonna go after some darker brown. All right, it's right back here. Will help us to define this background here. And if it runs, don't worry. If you splattered it, don't worry. Okay, that happens. Especially if I use too much water. But I can always come back and make that work. Now I'm gonna go to that turquoise again. And find what defines things here. But you see me working all around, and I think that this is real important, all right? Because you gotta let the gouache dry. And if you don't, then you're faced with you know, having to try and make things work, and they don't, all right? Because you really do need to have a drier surface. You see how I can make the negative space work. I think that's real important. Okay. And we'll do that, and then we're gonna go up above a little bit with that same dark. Right up here. As it kind of goes across like that. To define the flower. That's gonna go like that. And there's a little bit of this underneath. Something like that. And then I'm gonna go up in the upper part, because that's where it's darker. So I'm gonna go after the dark feeling of that. All right, and just see. And I'm watching the whole design at this point. That's when I was talking the painterly approach, this is a painterly approach. All right, and it gives you an idea of how you can handle the brush and your design at the same time. All right, I think that's an important thing to think about. I'm gonna go after a little bit lighter value here of this turquoise cloth, because it's lighter in this area here. So we'll just make it a little bit lighter. It goes across. And now I'm looking at design, and design is, where do I want to work next? I know that I'm going to, one of the things that I really want to do is, I want to keep it painterly. So I'm not making things into objects at this point, all right? But there are definitive elements. And like one of the definitive elements is the shadow here. Okay, that we feel under the form here. And we can see its edge as it moves away. And we're working our edge as well. Okay, and we can feel the temperature change in it. It's a little warmer in the middle. And it comes back toward the vase. And then we can kind of feel that it gets bluer back here. So we're going to use a little bit cooler blue. And we're going to make that shadow, and then we're going to make the other shadow that has a certain sense of green in it as well as blue. Okay. And we're going to, and purple. And we're going to kind of define it at this point. And we're moving away from the form. So you can start to see how the form is starting to become defined. And it's by the shadows. So you really want to think in terms of shadow. And then light. Looking out like that. So that's sort of where we are at this point. Put the slide in back here. Just enough to feel it. And now I'm going to go to a flat brush. All right. And a flat brush is going to help me to cover the space quicker. All right. And and define things a little bit more. And so this time now I can start to go to defining the light on this picture. And I'll start to really make the strength of the contrast. I want to know exactly where it is. All right, and I want to judge its color because it does get cooler as it goes away. But you can see how I'm really working edges now. All right, I think that's important. And I'm working at transparency of water. So I'm not using a lot of thick paint yet. But I will where I know I have more solid moments of light. And so I'll go after that a little bit more. And then make that area something like that. And then after that, I'm gonna go after the yellow object, which I think is or the orange yellow object. And here's where I start to feel the temperature and solidity of the light. And so now I'm really popping that. Okay, now I'm just gonna use a little bit of water to model it a little bit more. And let it dry a little bit, use some orange. All right, go after the orange in it. And try to get the feeling of that orange object. We know it's dark underneath. You know, when I was talking to the new people today, I was talking about value and saying that your values weren't as good as they could have been. All right, so in a way, we need to work at that. So now I'm gonna bring some red orange in. The red orange is gonna be in here. And so now you see that being built here like that. And it's relatively thin paint at this point. All right, and I do have with the complement of orange is blue, but the transition is orange and blue mixed together. So here, the area where we have shadow is orange and blue mixed together, and it becomes a green. So now we've got that sense of green there, and that's kind of coming around. Something like this. We're gonna see some red in it too, but at this point, I'm feeling the green in it. All right, and also I feel the red of the orange back here. It gets a little darker. And we have a little highlight of cool color, maybe a touch of bluish highlight right here. Now we'll throw that blue highlight on. So that's gonna help to define this part of the gourd that's there. And we come back now with a little bit more thicker paint, because I really want to work that edge and really get that moment of light. So that moment of light is sitting in here like this, but it's not as light. So I'm using more water as the moment of light on the handle. And so what I'm going to do is just work that across. Something like that, and then really pop that light on the handle. Right here with a really heavy piece of light, and then follow it up with the edge of the brush. Kind of bring it out like that. And now we can kind of go after the red shadows. The red shadows are here. They're crimson. And so now we can go after that shape, which is under the tomato. And so now we're finding that crimson shadow, which I think you need to be able to read the shapes and see the way the shadows play up against that shape. All right. And then the contrast of it. When we do look at that red, it really is a really strong red right here. So we're gonna really bring that reddish shadow around. And it's gonna be something like this. This one. Okay, and then we're gotta go after the red of the tomato a little bit more. We know the dark side. So we're gonna use a darker crimson. All right, for this area of the tomato. Because this is where the shadows are. And so now we're using that red to put down like that. And I'm watching my ground now. I'm watching the orange ground. I don't want to color in everything. Okay. So I just want you to recognize that. I want to use some of that ground. And make sure that it works, all right, for the painting. Here is one of the strongest edges right here. Right there. So just keep that in mind, all right? This is one of the great things about teaching gouache. I really think gouache is an easier way to learn painting than with any of the other mediums. Maybe I'm biased, all right, but I feel that it can give you a lot, all right? And so now you see me doing this. The tomato is gonna come out of this, but one of the things that I want you to recognize as well is that I may leave some of that ground as reflected light. Okay, so now we're gonna kind of go over here and get this. Come back with that tomato over there. You can kind of see how that's falling together. I think it's falling together pretty nicely at this point. All right, I'm excited to see how this is gonna play out. All right, because I think I've got things going the way I want them to go. But one of the other things I want to tell you is don't ignore areas in the painting that are important. For instance, there's a piece of yellow right here. One of the yellow flowers. All right, don't ignore that. All right, because I think that's important. And then if we do feel that the dark is sort of a green dark, then we'll throw that green dark in here like that. Okay, and with the flowers, we've got areas of light now and more ochre color. So like for instance, this flower here has a kind of a light on top of it right there. And it kind of goes along the edge of it down here. So now we're kind of bringing that in. And I'm gonna go back, I wanna go back to the darker reds again, because here is where it's darker. And I'm just using crimson now to make that a darker red. This is where you wind up using mostly your pure colors. Okay, and then you're gonna use a warmer red for in here, then you're gonna throw that warmer red on. Use your brush. And even to a certain extent, just leave some of that ground come through. And I know that this dark green is going across here, so we're gonna throw a little bit more green in there and maybe a little darker. I'm gonna mix blue and green together, a dark green. And that's gonna make that dark. And it's gonna get darker up against that red object, all right, because that's what happens. All right, and as it goes away from that red object, all right, it starts to get less dark. So now you're playing that. And then you're also playing the shadows, which are green, blue shadow. All right, you have to read the color. But that green, blue shadow is just going underneath the object. All right, and now we're gonna come back to some of the some of the highlights. All right, I'm gonna make a yellow ochre kind of light. But now we're really gonna go after the highlights on the top of the flower here. Get it shaping, okay? And notice that I don't work anymore on areas that I'm moving around. This is real important, all right? Because I think that sometimes people wind up staying in one place too long. Here, I'm gonna put a little bit of gray on the back of this because that's what it has. A sense of gray. And then I'll put a little bit of white highlight on the front of this flower. Okay, because it is really quite strong. And I'm gonna go look for that other places, like for instance, this yellow, I mentioned the petal on here. Being yellow, we want it to be bright yellow, okay? And we do have some other yellows, so we can kind of find those. There's a yellow that's coming out of this flower, right here. All right, and we have another yellow that kind of bends up. This is where using a flat brush will really make you able to do that. I can just bend that brush and make that flower petal. And then there's another one here. And then you have just one little flick of yellow there. And then you kind of have yellow greens right underneath it. They're not yellow, but they're kind of greenish. So we're gonna make them green. Okay, and then we're gonna put that little button of dark green in the middle. And it's sort of a, we can lighten it, but right now, that's where it is. And we can come back now with those purple flowers that we started in the beginning and really go after that purple. All right, it's a really strong dark, but we can kind of build that shape now. All right, we're ready for that. So now you see me kind of building that dark shape. All right, and just try to get them to work together a little bit. Got one over here. Sometimes you can even brush out of the center of it to kind of make it more like the feeling of the dark flower. All right. Remember, we did use that magenta earlier. It sort of disappeared. So I'm going to come back with it again. And it's darker, but it has a sense of light in it as well. So we'll try to find the lights on it, but right now I'm just gonna put the petals on. And get the dark because that's gonna give me a contrast. And they kind of wiggle a little bit, then they kind of move into one another here. So now we're gonna do that. And to make that, I'm gonna use a little bit of ultramarine blue. I wanna feel the color in that one button. And because it is as dark as it is, it's gonna make the space behind it lighter. Okay, so now we're feeling the lightness pushing up against it. Right about here. And I think this is real important. Same way in here, the lightness really starts to come out in the middle. All right, and we can kind of feel the different changes of size as that goes out. We can kind of get a feeling for that, and we can get a feeling for what's going on around it and how all of a sudden it makes a circle. And so now we have that circle. And we do have a leaf there. I'm just gonna leave that. And I'm gonna try to play the same thing all the ways across here. Because that's where the background is. And just study that. Use your brush. Study how that's working. What do we feel any in here? Not very much in here. right, but on that one side. And when we do feel a light at the bottom underneath it, so we get this horizontal light there. I'm gonna just make that a little bit stronger now as it goes across, just enough to be able to fill those flowers. And then the next thing is to go after some of the dark stems perhaps. There's a darker stem here, kind of brown, kind of goes behind the petal. And this one, I really like working on these. It's funny, but I really like working. I forgot what I was gonna say, but I really like uh, working the different colors. So now we're kind of going back here, kind of trying to keep the shadow. Bring that up. And we're gonna go after the light on this one. Ochre looking. And that's where we get the orange and maybe a touch of green. And let's see where it is. Need a light. Need to really build a light. And this is where we build a light here. Now, that light, we got some little moments of, and this is where you can use the ground to not have to fill everything in. All right, and you can make the object by using the ground, which I think is really interesting. All right, now we're gonna go with some violet in here, some of the violet on the side. And it's coming out here, so we can kind of feel it like that, and maybe something there. That will give you an idea of how that's working. And here, this is a little darker, but it's still bluer, so we're gonna throw some darker blue in there because that's where it goes up against the leaf. And I might come back with a little bit of dark green again. Not as dark over here. Now we have that. And I think that with the brown, like I said earlier, we were really feeling this brown back here. So now I'm gonna use it to make my edge against the pot. And I'm gonna work away from that because that's more of a solid moment. So now I'm gonna take that back here like this. And you get an idea of how this is starting to come together, start to work, all right? I'm gonna come back a little bit more with the picture. This is where you layer the gouache. Okay, because you want to bring that light up on there. And you want to use it to help to define this one rose that's right in there. So I'm going to use it like that, and then it kind of comes around. And we feel the shadow of that rose. Like this. And then this kind of comes in here like this. Something like that. Okay. And we're gonna go out with that rose. Again, it's one of those yellow ochre kind of things happening right here. And we can see how it kind of builds around. It's really interesting. Now, this is where if I take out too much of the ground, I'll have a little problem with it. So I want to make sure that I don't take out too much of the ground. So I'll bring back some of the brown a little bit. Actually on the top of that. And then some of the blue that might be on this handle here. All right, because it's going to make the edge of that flower. As it's blue against it. And then we have some really thin highlights of light on it. And this is where you use your brush very thinly to kind of get a highlight. Bring a highlight back. This is the manipulation of the brush. You have to kind of understand how to touch. Okay, and define. And here it gets a little darker as it goes down here. So we're gonna use burnt sienna to give us a little bit darker contrast there. And be careful I don't let that run. And that might help me to get at least the feeling of that flower. And then we have a little bit darker bluish shadow against it. It's really interesting how that works. But we have that kind of violet blue. I'm going to make it a little bit more violet. Not blue. Because it doesn't resonate against that flower so easily. And then we could kind of develop the handle a little bit more here. Okay, even to the extent of using a little bit darker value. All right, right in against it, right here. So you feel the handle. And then go after that dark shadow that's here. It makes the handle as well. It makes some of the light of the picture. But you can see how the lights sometimes start to disappear. All right, and this is the sometimes the water in the board. Okay, or sometimes you just haven't put enough paint on. So and you want to really go after the edge. What you feel like a picture. Now you're seeing that. Now we have this up here. Once I got that in, I really needed to really perk this up. Because this is definitive. And it kind of makes the area above what we're seeing. All right, so with that, I'm gonna come back, excuse me. And use a little bit more violet in this part of the flower. Some of that, because I don't want you to look there. And I also want you to look at certain parts on here. Like for instance, this one has a really strong light on the edge of it. All right, and if you can take your brush and follow it, that's great. That's enough to kind of make an edge. And then you have these moments where you have the highlights of the top. Now you're kind of playing with that. It was always a challenge to be trying to be too accurate, so be careful because you don't want to be too accurate. Right, too accurate means it doesn't work. So you have to kind of be very careful about that. And I'm just gonna let that sit for a while. I got other ones that I've got to work on. So over here we have this one. Something like that. And, see what we do. We always know that there's gonna be a dark pushing up against the light. So when we do something like this, we're gonna see the dark pushing up against it. All right, or in the case of the pedal here, we're gonna see a dark really pushing up against it, especially on that side. And here, we really feel the light making this rose right here. So it's interesting, I'm trying to solve this rose, but it's the light that's making the rose. All right, so going to push that light, and I want to watch now how much water I put in here. So you can kind of see that start coming out of there. And I have to work my lights. This is real important, so I really need to look at these. And see where the strongest moments of light are. Okay, and you know, just kind of find them. So we haven't really done all of these, not all of the ones that we need to do. And so at this point, that's what I'm gonna go after. Is trying to find those. I mean, this is a complex painting. I like what's going on though. I like to where I am. At this point. And you can see me bringing up that light. But now you're starting to see some balance going on in the piece. All right, and I think that's important. So see how this works. Now I'm gonna go after a darker turquoise. Okay, over here, darker. And how intense do I want it to be? How intense do I want it to be? That's gonna be a decision I'm gonna have to make. You know, how much, when I say intense, how much white do I add to it? Okay, because you just have to ask yourself questions like that. I mean, that's how you resolve a painting. And you know, I know that I have green, so I'm gonna have crimson nearby, so that's another thing that I want you to recognize. And we have back here, we have part of the table. So now we're gonna bring that in back here. And that's gonna help to define this zucchini. And help to define that flower. And we haven't done it, remember, it's interesting, you gotta tell yourself to move around, and if you don't, you're not gonna see it, and of course. I'm not paying attention to the green object that's in the front here. All right, so now I want to do that, right? Sometimes you overlook things like that. That's why you have to work the whole thing. But now you see me bringing that in, and remember, we're on a tone ground, okay? So I'm really trying to preserve the tone ground as well. And just make it work. Here it gets darker as it goes over here. It should, because it's pushing up against the light. The more it pushes up against the light, the darker it's going to be. Right? And there is reflected light. This is one of the things that I think maybe a lot of students miss, but there is reflected light here. Kind of comes into this object here. This pepper. Okay, and it has a crimson light underneath it. So we're gonna give it a little crimson. And that's here. Crimson shadow. All right, and now we're gonna really go after the light in the front of there. And the light in front is not as strong a light as back by the tomato, but it is a little bit warmer. So it might have a little bit of orange mixed into it. So we're gonna use that to bring up this. And so now you see me bringing that up. I'm waiting for this to dry. This is taking, this is what happens if you have too much water in an area. It will not absorb the paint, but it'll absorb the paint to the point where it'll make it almost like it's cloudy. And that's an issue that we just have to solve. I don't have anything to do but just wait till it dries. All right, just in case people think that you have to go after it right away. No, you wanna let it dry. Okay. And now I'm gonna throw the light in here, cause we have this one isn't as light as this one. So, you know, if I have to, I'll have to perk the light up in here, or I'll darken the space behind it. So I'm gonna use a little bit more water here, so that it, trying to get it shape. And go after this flower here. This is the one I didn't pay any attention to, and is also a very important shape. So it's easy to paint it with a lot of water first, so that you're sure you kind of get your shapes right, and you're then you can kind of come back and make it stronger. You want to make sure you get your shapes. And then I'm going after this blue that we used earlier. And this is where it goes darker. It goes darker right up against this flower. Okay. And it goes darker, let's see, it comes down like this. And then we have our other flower. I was trying to make these work here. And then we have this is where the cloth goes darker. Right here. So now we're gonna bring that value change in here. And work it like that. And if we have to use a little water, kind of move it in from the edge, and then just wait for it to dry. Okay. So I want to wait for that to dry. I want to wait for these to dry. We do have the moment of light back here. Actually, I don't know where this came from. I guess this is this one in the front here. Yeah, this is this one in the front. It kind of comes down here like this, catches a little bit of light on the stem. So we can bring that down, see where it gets a little bit stronger, comes in. And I want to use as much of the ground as I can here, but it's going to be more violet shadow here. So I'm going to bring more of a violet shadow in for this particular flower as it gets darker. It goes like that. This one, I'm going to come back again, make it stronger. Right here, go after its shape. Sometimes you go after the value first, then you go after the color. That's probably gonna still dry in there, we'll see. Now we're gonna come back and intensify the light down below. This is where we can really pop our contrast a little bit more. This is a little warmer light. It feels a little oranger in the front. Okay. And so we're gonna build that up. And we're now starting to build it in. It's all gonna dry. You understand the board that you're on, understand the amount of water that you've used. Okay, and as you're painting, the thing that's important for you to recognize is that you have to design it as you're working. All right, so it's interesting how this all works. I'm just gonna throw in some really strong light there. I'm gonna go back to this one flower here because it's gonna be bigger, because it's closer to me, and it's gonna feel a little bit more purple. And I think that that's what we're feeling through these, so, we're trying to get the feeling of it, purple. And then also the values that happen in here. So we're throwing that in like that. And, brought a little bit more violet in. I don't, always squinting, all right, to make sure that something isn't stronger than something else, and like that's a strong vertical moment there. This is starting to dry, you're gonna see it dry, so just keep that in mind. This is one of the things about making these paintings that is a challenge. All right, is to just know that it takes time for everything to dry. And if you don't wait for it to dry, all right, that's when you really have trouble with it. So you want to make sure you understand that. I want that to be a really bright yellow. That's not a bright yellow. So I've got to get my yellow to be bright. So I'll throw that on like that. And not so sure that someone could understand this right here. So I'm gonna play with it for just a few minutes. and adjust these, the sizes of these a little bit more. Cause I want them to be. See how I'm touching right now, you know? I wanna finish this painting, so I'm gonna be working on it. So, because I put so much time into it, I really wanna get it to where it really works. Okay, and, you know, so. If you're staying, you know, if you can't stay, I understand. I want the new people to see how I can work on a tone ground. The tone ground is kind of fun, so, if anything. It has a lot of potential. one thing with gouache, you can paint right over something or add something. And it's really interesting how, just adding the greens, really make a difference here. All right, so, Democratic, let's see, question.
Are you in class?
They may be watching, somebody may be here. Is anybody here watching me?
There's somebody. I'm going to ukulele lesson now, but my kids are at tennis and, that's beautiful. Beautiful. There's an ant. It would be cool if you could get the ant in your thing.
The ant, okay.
And there's stuff on the top shelf of the fridge. There's these chicken wraps and then there's stuffed, peppers. You can bake, okay? All right, I'll see you.
So you won't be back until,
7. No, 7:30. Okay, and then we have to do the framing, I guess.
yeah, we have to do that. That's next. Yeah, we have the show at Glen Echo, so for people, don't forget to come this weekend if you can. All right, love to have you join us for the show that we're gonna be putting on.
Okay.
And you notice I've left the ground on the one side. That's kind of a interesting thing to not take the ground away too much. All right, only because we want to keep the focus in the middle. And so that helps to not not to have the focus too far away from you. And it's drying, everything is drying, so that's the hard part about this. You want it to dry, okay? The biggest problem is that you're working on it. And it's harder to get it to work if as it's drying. So this is one of the things to keep in mind, that you're trying to work it, but you have to work the whole painting. And truthfully, it's gonna be a challenge to get the whole painting to do what you want it to do, and when it's still wet. So having it dry is gonna take some time. Some people use hair dryers. That's one way of making it dry faster. So that's something you can think about if you decide that that might be the route that you might want to go. Is to let it dry faster by using a hairdryer. How far do we take out the blue on this side? Actually, if I carry it out here, then I can fill the present of the rectangle without having to fill everything in. So, that's good. I haven't gone to a small brush yet, all right? I've been using the brush that, I started with a round brush and now I'm using a flatter brush. But eventually I'm gonna have to go to a round brush. When I do that, that's gonna change things. Cause I'm gonna put details in. And so at this point, it's more about, getting the thing where I want it. Notice I'll put a color in before I actually put a shape in. And I think, that's because I can make it into a shape. Sometimes I don't wanna make it too much into a shape. Keep it simple. And I like drawing dead objects, by the way, they're fun. So. Okay, I'm gonna let it dry for a few minutes and then I'm gonna use the small brush to kind of finish it off. And if I decide that I wanna work on it more, I'll come back and work on it more later on. But again, that drying is real important. So you really wanna understand that. So now I'm gonna go to a small round brush. Yeah, and it's gonna be, I'll tell you what, it's going to be one of the brushes that I kind of started with, which is the squirrel hair. But now I'm gonna go after accents. Accents are elements of painting where you kind of refine things, all right? Sometimes an accent can be dark, it can be light. Uh, sometimes it's just an edge or a line. But we'll now start to put in our accents, usually a little bit thicker paint if you can get it on a round brush. Enough to mostly line work. Don't overdo it, especially in areas that you're not looking at. So I think that's real important. Um, And I mentioned earlier about making things too precise. All right, or working them too much. This is one of the things that you'll find about this that you're gonna have to play with. All right, but it is about the how much information you put in. Because that comes down to it's a challenge. It's a challenge to get things to read. All right, the way you want them to. And sometimes you can make a light by making a darker dark to make the light jump out at you. Okay. And you look for moments of tension, like right here, where I wanna really build the feeling of the light pushing up against the flower. I'm gonna put a little bit stronger contrast there. You don't wanna add too much detail, because if you do, you'll make it too busy. So you always tell yourself to simplify. And I'm almost done. At least I almost done to at this point, all right? Cause I wanna see what it does when it dries. That's how that works. You see me using a small brush now, just kind of drawing things on it, all right? This is the kind of, just the final touches that you're dealing with here. And how you wanna make this this work. I mean, the painting's never done, you keep discovering things as you go along, all right? So that's just the nature of making paintings. But yeah, I think we're kind of good to go at this point. I'm gonna just let it be. And I'll photograph it, see what it looks like. And then, if I have to come back and lay thicker color on top of things, I'll do that. But you gotta give it time to dry. Because I think that's one of the important aspects of this. But you see how much tone ground I left? All right, I left a lot of orange. And I think that comes through. And the design is being based on that. So if anything, yeah, I kind of like what happened. I don't know if anybody else is there. Anybody here?
Yes,
Wilda,
still here.
what do you think, Wilda? What do you think?
It looks great.
Yeah,
The drawing information is very good for me.
yeah, I think it went pretty well. I think
Yeah.
it looks good so far.